76ers back in action against the Nets. We're going to preview it all and some new additions to the team as well when we come back right here on Locked On 76ers.
You are Locked On 76ers, your daily Philadelphia 76ers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into Locked On 76ers. We're your host, Keith Pompey, 76ers beat writer. I'm Kayla, Santiago, sideline reporter for the Delaware Bluecoats, which is the NBA G League affiliate of the Philadelphia 76ers. If you're watching us on YouTube, make sure you like, comment, subscribe. People, I know it's been a tough season, but if you want to vent in the comments, just go ahead. You can like it as well because we're right there with you, everybody, wherever you're listening as well on the audio platforms. In addition, you can also find us on our free daily newsletter on lockedondaily.com. So the 76ers have the Nets coming up. To me, this is a must-win game, especially with all the players that the Nets have out right now. You look at Clowney, Melton, Russell as well, in addition to Thomas. Now, this is a game they should win. They haven't won games they should have won this year. But Keith, to me, this is a game where maybe you decide, okay, this and the Bulls where you're going to keep going or you're going to actually rest the guys that need to get rest and sit out. What are your takes on it? Because this is a kind of a big game coming up for the Sixers. So they're still kind of on the outside, right there on the outside looking in of that play-in spot.
You know, it's crazy because I think that right now, I think you have to decide shortly, but maybe this isn't the time to decide. So I think like this game against the Brooklyn Nets and also Monday's game against the Cleveland, Chicago Bulls. I'm about to say Cleveland Cavaliers. What Cleveland just did to the Knicks on Friday night. I think these are two games that, right now you might just want to say, okay, let's just try to get these tiebreakers, right? And then we decide from from moving forward. So I think play it out, see how they are. But then once they go to New York, the Knicks, then they have those other games. And I think like that's when you got to do a real long, hard look at what you're trying to do moving forward.
And I think, too, when you look at the Bulls' schedule, they have the Suns, which is a tough matchup coming up as well. And then they face the Sixers. So the Sixers have an easier road to the Bulls. And I bring up the Bulls because they're right there in that Eastern Conference where the 76ers want to be to try to get into that play-in tournament, to possibly get into the playoffs if that's something they're still looking to. But, Keith, going into this matchup, we were talking some numbers yesterday, and we'll continue to talk them here today. They are dead last in some categories or second, third to last in some categories in the NBA. And you look at those numbers and you say, I knew it was bad, but it's that bad? It's that bad right there on the perimeter defense as well in that field goal range. Why don't you shoot them out for the people that might not know?
Yeah, like here it is, Kayla. Like heading into like Friday night's NBA action, the Sixers were tied with the Detroit Pistons for 28th in the league in three-point percentage defense at 37%. They also ranked 29th in field goal percentage defense, less than 5 feet away from the basket at 67.2%. Now, the only team that was worse than them were the Washington Wizards. And all the other teams that were like in that top five were bottom five, right? Were teams who were tanking. So when you look at that, we're talking about, okay, like this is and the age of analytics, right? So where do people want to score? They want to get threes, and they also want to go to the rim. And that's where the Sixers are getting torched on both areas. So that just speaks volumes of just how horrid the defense is right now. And, let's face it, it's going to be tough for you to win games, especially playoff games, if you can't defend in the perimeter and you can't like protect the rim. They got problems right about now.
And when you have to do it consistently too, if you're trying to get into that first round, there are no breaks if you want to try to get out of that first round. So you need to turn it up on every level that you can, especially if they somehow get into that first round, they're going to be playing that first seed or second seed, depending if they get into the play and where they end up and things like that. But when you look at it and when you put out those numbers, perimeter defense is something I feel like this team has struggled with for years past, but it's really, really bad this year. But when you're talking about at the rim, and I get they're not the tallest team, they're not the biggest team. I understand that there's sometimes that Yabu and Paul George, when Joel Embiid's not out there, are the tallest guys on the floor. I get it. You bring Andre Drummond in to kind of be that rebounder guy, the best rebounder in the NBA. He's been a little bit banged up. Joel Embiid doesn't want to play full defense, and he's getting out rebounded in some capacity until late in the game if it's a close game, because what's going on with that knee, he can't play at full percent. And it's just crazy to me. That's where it really looks crazy, because the perimeter defense, you knew that was bad. That number makes it seem a lot worse, and it is that bad as we're looking at it. But when you're looking at the rim too, I mean, it's just horrible in all capacities for the 76ers. And defensively, to me, the thing that I look at too, Keith, is there's sometimes when we're looking at these games, when we're analyzing these games, it's as simple as them not even closing out on the three-point line. Them just going like this and allowing the shot to happen against good three-point shooting teams. And I understand if a three is made, but they're not even trying to get out there. The effort isn't there, upon it also being just really, really bad defense. And I understand that the NBA, it's a three-point game. People like outside the perimeter, Curry has changed it, but it also is a defensive game too. And the 76ers aren't going to go far without their defense.
Exactly right. And, we talk about this over and over again about roster construction, right?
Yeah.
So we look at it in the perimeter up until recently, they had older guys, right, who couldn't really move the way that they used to. And then on the inside, you had initially Caleb Martin, a 6'5" guard playing power forward, right?
Yeah.
And then you look at it and you had Yabu, and now you have Drummond and you have Embiid. But both of these guys are older. They're both injury prone, right? They both had a lot of injuries. So you go and you bring in Yabu, who's 6'6". Now it's funny, he's listed as 6'8". We've been saying he's 6'7". Nick Nurse said on Thursday he's 6'6", right? So you have him. But here's my question. The guys that they've been bringing in are like the centers, are more like power forwards who are offensive-minded pick and pop guys. Well, you know that the team is struggling from the defensive end. You would think that the two-way guys they would bring in, or they would try to sign a third center who's an elite rim protector. You know what I'm saying? And I get it, Adem Bona, you want to give him a chance. But if you know that this is a problem and you're really trying to win, you got to go out there and get some defensive-minded people who's going to help you protect the rim.
And for Adem Bona, too, for one, you can't also expect him to be that guy that's going to bring those numbers up, because he's still a raw talent. He could be good in years to come, but you're not going to get that 100% from him this season here in the 2024-2025 season in the NBA. In addition, what does that tell you? Yeah, right. Yeah. So what does that tell you too, in the sense of, okay, when you go forward, you want to make trades that maybe try to help this team win, and you don't really get any type of rim protection, and you look at those numbers and you say, wow, it's really, really that bad. So that's something you're going to look at in this game with the 76ers. That's something that has really hurt them going forward too, in that Nets and that Bulls game. And then I think from there, where you can really kind of force an opinion or a narrative of this is what they should do or this is what they shouldn't do going after those two games, because those are two winnable games for the Philadelphia 76ers. And the Nets have a lot of guys out here tonight. So we're going to wait and see if the 76ers are able to come out on top and embrace that. But we are going to turn things over to a little bit of a positive note. Yes, people, there are some positive things going on with the 76ers, some feel-good stories that, Keith, you were able to get out there from new guys coming in, and just how full circle it is, because I think a lot of people forget too that for some of these guys that maybe thought that their chance going back to the NBA was out, they have now an opportunity, and some really, really good stuff that Keith wrote in the Philadelphia Inquirer. So go check that out. But we're also going to talk about it on the other side in just a moment here. All right. So Lonnie Walker, I want to start with him. And I know you were able to talk to a lot of these guys at practice coming in. They make the deal official. He's a Reading, PA native, and he really just said everything is full circle from him. It's a great opportunity being able to be back in the NBA, back in Philadelphia. Keith, I'll let you kind of talk more about what he directly said to you, but these are the feel-good stories that you love to see at this point of the season when things are starting to dwindle down. A guy that's just grateful to be there. He kind of gets back to his homeland a little bit, playing in Philadelphia. And I'm excited to see what Lonnie Walker can do.
Yeah, you know what the funny thing is, I'm going to say this, and I didn't want to bring this up to him, but I remember when Lonnie was coming out in the draft, 2018, and, he was a guy from Miami. I knew he was from Reading. I knew he played for team final, this and that. And it was one of those things where I asked him on the record in front of people, right? Do you want to play for the 76ers? Like, were you a Sixers fan? This and that. Now, the funny thing is, a lot of these guys, when you ask them these questions, Kayla, it's like they don't want to say, yeah, I want to play for the Sixers. I want to play.
Right.
They give you these generic things like, oh, I really wasn't a fan of a team. I like players, yada, yada. Yo, on Friday, my man was like, this is very humbling. Like, you know what I mean? He's like, I'm still trying to process it all, to say the least. It still feels like a surreal moment to be, so close to home, being in Philly of all places. I'm taking it one day at a time, just staying present, doing what I got to do for the team and playing to the best of my capabilities on the floor, right? So it was like he's really, expressing himself. And the crazy thing, not crazy, but so he initially, before everything happened, he kind of said, you know what? I'm going to be here in Lithuania through the remaining of the season.
Yeah.
So he goes to sleep. Next thing you know, he wakes up. He has 30 missed calls, right? People are like on Twitter going crazy. And he was actually vacationing in France. So what he did is that was like on a Tuesday.
Yeah.
So, and we know like their time, they're several hours ahead of us, like at least 6-7 hours ahead of us, right? So what he does is that next morning, early in the morning, he flies straight to Philly. Overnight. Excuse me, not overnight, but a morning flight. So he just flew to Philly. And he said all he had with him right now, he didn't even go to Reading. Like he didn't so all he has with him right now is the clothes that he packed for the vacation. So he's like, for the next couple of weeks, I'm gonna be wearing a lot of 76ers sweats and other gear, right? And it's just crazy, but he didn't even want to go to Reading. He just wanted to stay in Philly and be close to the team just in case, his paperwork and everything came in early. So this guy is very excited about being a 76er. And it's funny how before he was like, oh, no. Now he's like, Andre Iguodala, Elton Brand, Drew Holiday. They were all my guys. But before, years ago, he was like, oh, no. It's just, I'll be happy to go to any NBA team. And now he's just loving it being home.
And those are the feel-good stories that I think get lost in translation too, when you're looking at a season, you're saying, okay, what could be good? Well, this is something positive. And I don't think Lonnie Walker, and I know he's not going to be the guy that goes out there and gets them over the hump and gets them back in the swing of things. That's not the reality of the situation. But in addition to that, this guy didn't even know if this was going to be a possibility. You get to go back home. You're so excited to do it. And yeah, maybe he said before that he didn't know he wanted to play for, but now all those memories are starting to come back for him. So it's a really good feel-good story. And once again, Keith wrote a fantastic article about it in the Philadelphia Inquirer if you want to go check it out. In addition to, it's interesting, of course, the transaction being made of the two-way players because that spot was open after Justin Edwards, of course, got that standard deal. So moving on from that as well, Alex Reese is somebody that I'm really excited for going as the two-way guy. And I'm looking at it more of a Delaware Blue Coat side of things because I do cover them for throughout their season, regular season and into the playoffs. So 61 made threes, tied for the fourth most in the G. So you're going there with Jared Brownridge, who is the second best three-point shooter and most 3 points made, second best on that list. He just got to second this year with the Delaware Bluecoats. He's a Delaware Bluecoats guy. He's been with them. He's a vet. You already have a sharp three-point shooter out there, and you add this other piece as well, and Alex Reese to be able to do that. I mean, he's exactly what you want to see in terms of his three-point percentage, but of course, a lot of that has come from the G League. I think this is a player that you're really not going to see with the 76ers. I think that he's going to stick down in the G, and maybe he gets pulled up here and there as well. But this is somebody I'm really excited about for the Delaware Bluecoats, especially that Justin Edwards got pulled up, because I know Edwards' three-point shooting percentage in college wasn't all that, but when he came with the Bluecoats, he was a really, really good shooter in a lot of their games. So I think this is kind of a whole, I don't think he's as impactful as Justin Edwards and as quick and can get up and down the floor on both sides of the floor at the G level. But I do think it kind of fills that gap just a little bit, especially in the shooting realm.
Yeah, and I think that move is more so for the G, right?
Yeah.
Because we talked about it. I mean, he's a guy that, it's nice to have a big who could pick and pop, who can hit threes and everything like that. But when we look at it, you say to yourself, what is the needs for the Sixers? They need rim protection. They need defenders. They need a guy who's going to grab rebounds, do all those other things. But like the Sixers, I will say this. They are one of those teams, and they always weren't this way. But the recent years, they became one of those teams where, winning G League games really matter to them. Like, it's just that one of those things. They take a lot of pride in that. So, he's a guy that they can look at. And let's face it, a lot of these moves that they're making aren't for this season. It's for they get a guy and see how he fits in the system. And maybe he can be a stretch big for him moving forward. But yeah, I feel like, this move right now is for them to for the G, but also Nick Nurse is going to take a look at him and see if he's someone that they, can move forward with.
Yeah, the Bluecoats have been successful too. I mean, they had Kobe Carl 3 seasons ago now, and he won the G League championship with them, and now he's on the Sixers coaching staff as well. Now, for the past 2 seasons, last year and this year included, they had Mike Longobardi, who was an assistant on a ton of NBA teams for around 20 years, and he took the head coaching position over in Delaware because he wanted an opportunity to be that head coach. And we talked to him a little bit about Justin Edwards. And then in addition to just the players that come through the system, and they teach them that, it's more of a marathon, not a sprint. They know it's a developmental league, that they, have goals to get to the NBA, but there's also so many great things that you can learn about being a part of the G League. And it's also just reps too. Obviously now, we're kind of preaching to the choir when we look at Alex Reese, because of course he was with Rip City Mix, the Portland Trailblazers G League affiliate. But at the same time, this is an opportunity to do that. In addition, Keith, you never know what's going to happen if the Sixers are like, okay, well, if they don't win against the Nets and the Bulls and they decide to shut some guys down, some of these players might get pulled up a little bit just to have some guys to fill out your roster. So, and to fill out that bench coming off the bench. So I think it's a good acquisition for the 76ers, for the Delaware Bluecoats, the organization as a whole. Once again, neither of these are groundbreaking acquisitions, talking back to Lonnie Walker, Roddy too, as well, in addition to Alex, but they are decent pieces that you can add to your team for the future.
Exactly. And let's be real. Now, when we talk about second apron and you talk about all these other things, a lot of times the guys that you're getting are basically minimum wage, minimum salary dudes. So you need to find these diamonds in the rough, so to speak, who can fill out a roster and basically be happy to fill out a roster with you, right? Yeah. Typically you might have a guy who's a vet and it's like, bruh, I'm sorry, but I was making $12 million last year. I'm not doing $2 million. Like, I'm not getting that. Whereas you get a young guy like, Reese, who is just hungry and happy to be in the league. And, he'll go 110%, run through a wall, do whatever. But these are the type of guys that teams are going to have to, if they have a roster like the Sixers, we have 3 max players. These are the type of guys that you're going to have to surround, these players with. So, it's a good move. It's a good move.
And the reality for the Bluecoats too, they're kind of in the same position as the Sixers on the season, but the G League is such a different monster because you're looking at the two guys that were leading scorers for them, and Jeff Doughton and Justin Edwards. Justin Edwards gets pushed to that NBA standard deal. Jeff Doughton was pushed up a lot to play with the Sixers on games that the Bluecoats had. So you're constantly playing with a shorter roster. There's a lot of different moves happening, but same thing as the NBA Eastern Conference in the G. Delaware Bluecoats, 7 wins. The teams above them only have 8 or 9 to be able to get even further up into those standings. So very much on the outside looking in there, but hey, 2 peas in a pod, maybe a little bit right there as well. As once again, the 76ers on the outside looking in. The Bluecoats get another acquisition as that 2-way player for Sixers and Delaware too. And before we send things off, Keith, we alluded to it a little bit in the early going, but the game is coming up tonight against the Nets. What do you want to see from the 76ers? What I need to see is a victory if they want to still make people believe. That's the easy answer. But what do you want to see from this team against a very short-handed Nets team going into tonight?
I mean, you know what? And that's the thing. Like, you say, what do I want to see? What do I need to see? It's more or less, what do I need to see more so than want to see? Yeah. I need to see them play better on the defensive end, because like when we look at it, you look at when they lost to the Brooklyn Nets the last game, and again, Tyrese, Maxey, and Embiid didn't play on February the 12th, the last game before the All-Star break. But the Brooklyn Nets really didn't light it up. Like they only made like 8 threes or something like that, right? And it was kind of like they shot from a poor percentage. So to me, this has to be a game where you build confidence, where we're going to shut these guys down. We're going to do what we can do. And like you said, the Nets are a shell of themselves. Like they're more depleted than the 76ers are. So you know what? The Sixers have to play with physicality. They have to make the right rotations. They got to close out on the 3, and they got to protect the rim like you have to. And I know D'Angelo Russell and other guys and, other players are pretty good. But at the same time, like you're basically going up against the Brooklyn Nets G League team. So you have to, no offense to G Leaguers, but if you got 3 max players, you got to come to play and dominate.
I think they do too. I need to see a victory. Not only that too, I would like to see, and what I think you need to see a little bit is really focusing and analyzing how Joel Embiid and Paul George play as well. Because there's one thing to have the injury. There's one thing to go out there, and the last time this happened, 2 points for Paul George. You need to see, to me, them go out there. I want to see Paul George kind of have that start that he did against the Celtics and finish that up a lot better than he did the other night. But I think it's important to see where those 2 guys are as well, because those 2 are the determining factor if they shut it down and forget about this season, or if they keep going. It is essentially up to those 2 because of those injuries. So is that effort going to be there? Because we know Joel Embiid can dominate, even at 50%, even if he doesn't look good. But is it going to be, the knee's bad, I'm not going to go out there, I'm not going to box out to get rebounds? The little things I want to see from 2 max players on your team to see where that kind of leads them going forward. I give it after the Nets and after the Bulls game, and then it might be time to shut it down or keep it going right now. It's been a tough season for the Philadelphia 76ers. We know, people, we understand, but we'll wait and see what they can do. Once again, that game is tonight at 7:30 p.m. at the Wells Fargo Center, and we will see you guys after the game breaking it all down. Let us know what you think in the comments, what you want to see from this game as well. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe in addition to that too. Well, thank you all so much for tuning in to Locked On 76ers. For Keith Pompey, I'm Kayla Santiago saying so long, and we'll see you guys next time.